you know? So I've been working my way through that, whether it's make a plan or reach out to people and tell them that you're grateful for them or whatever it is for that day, you know? And that's been really helping, actually. Be creative, do something creative, something like that. Practice a bit of Spanish.
When did outcasts come on that 105? Were we, maybe
oh,
we're 104?
you were the title. Yeah, it was 100. Yeah, it was, and then underneath outcasts. Absolutely. Yeah.
But it is extraordinary, the parallels, in the sense that you have your character is isolated within a community where you don't speak the language, and you have to kind of learn to kind of find your place within a community whose language is not your native language, which I think is very fascinating, which is kind of where you are as a person anyway, is you're and you're isolated to another extent in the fact that what is going on is actually happening as well. So the parallels are actually quite, it's art imitating life in that respect, which is, again, quite extraordinary. As my life does not, I haven't become governor of New York. Contrary to popular belief, not the case. I do ride around on a horse and wear red a lot. I feel it goes in my eyes. But that's where the parallels end. I probably should start wearing a wig. If the lockdown hairdo is anything to go by, my bouffant, as I'm sure a lot of people are suffering at the moment, it's becoming grandma. My hair goes from it's normal, now I'm your grandma. And it's got that kind of slightly bouffon-y, I could be a mobster in the 50s, that kind of slightly...
Got a little bounce to it, yeah.
There's too much bounce, John. There's just too much bounce. And what the bounce does is it creates areas where you're going, what is that? I've never seen that before. These are my daily struggles.
Yeah, I can see it's been affecting you quite severely.
It's a real thing. It's a real thing because we're suddenly going to come out of this, and one of the things is we're probably all going to go outside and go, who's that? Massive beard, strange hairstyle. It's going to be very odd. I mean, you're never going to get an appointment in a hairdresser for months.
Yeah, well, the thing that's been giving me a bit of laughs recently has been seeing everybody shaving their heads in young Ian style. I mean, that's great. I'm loving this. I'm seeing all these kids get sent their photos. Yeah, trendsetter. Like, my son asked for the mohawk, the young Ian look today. It's like, oh, that's so sweet, And that's
this is what happens in isolation.
Yeah, exactly.
What happens in isolation.
I should be shaving myself, my mohawk again. I don't know. I thought I quite suited it.
I don't think you should take it off the table. I think it should be. Move it up that list of 105.
105, okay.
Put it in brackets. You can bypass, but I would always come back to it.
Yeah.
Okay. Did young Ian make that decision to cut his hair because he wanted to become more mohawk, or what was it about?
I would imagine so, yeah. I imagine it's that sort of, when you go somewhere new, you're sort of trying to join that culture, right? Amalgamate into that culture. So that's why he gets these tattoos as well, which were such a huge part of the change of his identity, the shaving of the head. So it's all very... ceremonial and culturally significant to the Mohawks. So yeah, I mean it's great because it's a character as well that has always sort of been throughout. There's a lot of bastards in Outlander, So to have Ian there, yeah, to have Ian be there to be that sense of kind of right and wrong. It's always been a joy of playing him. Sometimes it's not the most exciting. Sometimes you want to be the arsehole or the bastard, but being Ian is fun. And certainly getting to explore the Mohawk culture has been such a benefit to this too. Such an amazing experience.
Tim, you can probably speak to that. What's it like being an arsehole and a bastard on Outlander?
It's fabulous. It's fabulous. The door's open. Is all I can say to that. It's very very exciting. I'm going to give you a little, just a really dull fact. But did you know? Just talking about the Mohawk language, but did you know? And I haven't just Googled this. This is something I actually did know.
Okay.
Is that the American Secret Service during the Second World War used to send their transmissions in? I think it was either Mohawk or Apache, because they were almost impossible to code break.
The wind talk,
because they were a language that the Germans had never come across.
Oh, really?
So they didn't understand the vowel syntax. They couldn't work out how these words were words. And so that's how the Americans... What about that?
It's definitely not dull because it was good enough for a movie with Nicolas Cage, Tim.
Is it?
Come on. Am I the only one who's seen this movie? Wind Talkers.
Yeah, you are literally, I think, the only person who's seen this movie.
Look, there's a lot of Nick Cage movies out there, and one day I will slowly make my way through all of them. But that definitely is one of them. Look, now that we're talking about Mohawk, and I wanted to circle back around again to this issue of identity, because I think like it's something that is really sort of on the forefront on Ian's mind, like who is he? And I wanted to relate it back to what it means to be an actor. I think as actors we're often forced into cultivating very separate public and private personas. I'm speaking for myself. I think one of the main reasons I fell into acting was because I've never been entirely comfortable with who I am. I express myself much better through a mask, by putting on a character. It just gives me sort of an excuse to express my true thoughts and feelings. And one of the things my family and friends really hate about me is that when I'm doing interviews or even this podcast, for example, I seem to slip into this persona that isn't really quite me. It's not the real me. And I have to say it's led to many sort of mental health issues in my life. I'm wondering if you, John, think about public and private persona as much as I do. How is the John Bell we see on screen any different from the John Bell who's, buying groceries at Tesco or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, of course there's going to be a difference. There's a performative aspect to being an actor, to being that person. But I try to keep myself as real as I possibly can. I mean, it's back to that as well. It's back to being able to have somebody you trust to be able to go, was that me there, or was that me being tense, or was that me, relaxed? And I've been trying to, get a bit more relaxed with it all. So yeah, I mean, yeah, it is a difficult thing. I can understand completely where you're coming from, David, about it being hard to keep reality and keep you when you're in this life and you're doing this business. So yeah, I mean, just have somebody you can try and talk to, I guess. That's why.
You had that with your parents. Your mum was keeping you honest, was she? Or your parents?
Yeah.
They've been there from the day one.
I think she was just very good at keeping it real, but in that way, in that sense that you can get caught up in the glitz and the glamour of it all and the sort of very addictive qualities to it. But my mum was just very much someone that was so separate from that world, never actually never part of the industry, so was always very, very aware of. I think the big thing was a lot of people would come up to her on set and expect her to be this kind of very crazy stage mum, pushy personality, and she's the complete opposite. So to have that influence in my life has served me so well. In fact, it served everybody well because she would often become the mum on set, and everybody would go to her for advice. I mean, I've had her, I've caught her, well, not caught her, but she's given folk into trouble, before on set. And because she's my mum, she was basically untouchable, so she could get away with it, So I love that about her. And
what kinds of things is she saying here?
I don't know if I can say. There was a very it was a big film that I did, and for sometimes we can get caught up in the hierarchy of a film set because everybody's got where they are, and so my mum was always thought this kind of is bullshit. We're all a team here. That was one of the big things she taught me, that the person that is every single job on a film set is important. And you should never be thinking because you're the actor, blah blah blah, that you are above anybody else. If you miss one part, the whole machine doesn't work. So when she saw stuff like that, injustices going on, people maybe not being given seats or whatever, she would call it out. Now, it's not my position to do that, because we're working on what we're doing. Call out stuff when you can, absolutely, but she just taught me to keep it real, and I appreciate it 100%.
Has that carried on with you in your life? Are you calling people out on set, John?
No, I'm usually the one that's getting called out, let's be real. I've had a few dirty looks thrown at me for Katrina. Behave. Haven't we all, though?
Well, to see, the apple never falls far from the tree.
Yeah.
I feel. I was going to say, no, my mother is very similar. My mother is of a very similar cast in that sense, is that she's very sort of blunt about things. But what she has given me is a work ethic. She was the hardest working woman I've ever met in my entire life, hardest working person I've ever met in my entire life. And it's interesting how that kind of imbues within you. I spent a lot of my life kind of repelling certain elements of my parents, kind of thinking, oh God, I'm not like that. No, I will not be like that. I will not be that. And then you find as you get older, actually those things you repel are actually quite almost virtues. I think, no, the work ethic of just kind of get on with it. My mother, for instance, when I said I wanted to be an actor, said, well, why don't we just ring Kenneth Branagh? I went, Mother, you cannot ring Kenneth Branagh. Oh, I'm sure I can. No, honestly, you really shouldn't. I'm doing it. Don't ring. And she did. She rang his theatre company and said, my son wants to be an actor and he wants to do work experience with you at your theatre company. They were doing Hamlet at the Barbican. He's, 14 or something. He'd like to come and do work experience with you. How would that be? And I didn't hear anything. And then a letter arrived from Kenneth Branagh saying, yes, we'd love to have him. We would love to have him come. Wow. And signed Kenneth Branagh. And I think it's those certain elements that parents give you, especially when they don't really know what the business is. And we kind of know that it's not like, you can't say that to that person because of what you're saying is the hierarchy. Yeah. Whereas mums especially kind of think, oh, that's bullshit. Bullshit, exactly. Let's go and do this. No, it's very simple. This happens and this happens. I don't understand what you're talking about. Let's just try it. And sure enough, more often than not, it's actually a really good thing because people respond to it. People actually quite like, oh, okay, well, I respect the fact that you've called me up and asked for this, or I respect the fact that you've called me out on set. It's those elements that I find fascinating.
Oh, that's so funny, Tim. I'm glad we've both got that kind of... Yeah, I love that.
Well, I think what we've all got in common is mothers, that who all adore us. I think if we didn't have that, we'd probably be different people. One thing you can always count on, if you're lucky, that your mother's going to believe in you. I think I was at stage just before auditioning for drama school, where I wasn't even going to be an actor. I'd sort of given it up. I was doing this other career path, and it was my mum who actually filled out the application for me and sent it in. Because I had already told her I didn't really want to do it. She said, no, you've got a talent and you should pursue it. And I did. And I think had she not done that, I probably would have been doing something else now. But she did not enter me in a competition and she did not ring Kenneth Branagh. I still had to do that audition and get it. Parents and people, someone you can rely on and to talk to through hard times is definitely something that I can relate to too, because my mum has always been there through really tough times. If ever I've had something go wrong in my life, the first person that I think of calling is mum. She's often always the last person I call at the best of times though. But when something is wrong, I'm definitely calling my mum.
I think I would have to say the same thing. It's my mother, but the same for me as you were saying is that she probably is the last person within that group. She will give the best advice and be the most straightforward. It's the most practical advice. I think one, it's so easy to overcomplicate things. You kind of think, what about this, and think of all these other aspects when actually the simplest solution is often the best of that, and that's what the advice my mother always gives. We're just going to go, we'll either just do it or don't do it. Yeah, will I go and tell him or don't tell him? There is kind of like very Yoda-esque. I've just realised it's sounding. Do or not do. That is the way. Although it doesn't look like it. She's a very beautiful lady. She doesn't look anything like Yoda. But I think it's definitely that aspect of that. Which is vital. And wonderfully, my wife has a very similar attitude to things. We'll just go and do it. Don't sit and procrastinate. You can sit and procrastinate forever. Just talk about it and plan things. Do that forever. Go, try it, do it now. Learn on the thing. Learn while you're doing it. You'll work it out. It's fine. And I think that's invaluable, especially in these times of great change. I think our natural actor instinct of it's constant change. We are all in a world of constant change as actors because no matter what job you have, it will end. and you know that instinctively. It's not as if you're going to work in a big company that will be there for 150 years, and your place within it, as long as you work hard. You can work as